Hi, this is Jessica Dawn. I'm here again. It's been a little while. I typically find that I tend to do seasonal readings. My last reading was intended to take people through roughly until mid-spring, late spring, and here we are a week away from the summer solstice. So, and we just kicked off a big 3-month wormhole passage with the Gemini new moon that was 2 days ago. And soon we'll be heading into a very exciting summer of a lot of change. So I thought, I felt inspired that it was time for me to sit down and do another overall reading of what I feel the energies are that would like to be shared through me. And there's been a lot of growth and change since my last reading, and I'm really excited to see kind of like what comes through, what comes out from my guide team and from the cards through me to you. It's an honor and a blessing to be able to share with you, and so thank you so much for watching and growing and participating in this awesome evolutionary process. All right, so I'm doing this entire reading in the flow, intuitively. I have not, I know my guide teams, I know who'd like to speak through different cards, but I didn't pre-prepare any questions. I didn't pre-pick any of the cards. I did pre-shuffle the decks. So it's just going to be a really honest, free-flowing reading, and probably going to break who knows, I might end up breaking some rules. We'll see how it goes. But the very first question is going to be, what is the overall energies coming up as we move into the summer solstice? And into the first eclipse passage. All right, I'm going to pick one more. This is the Magical Dimensions deck by Lightstar. It's an extremely powerful deck. I really feel like this deck has incredible potential to help people to grow and accelerate a lot more easily. All right, so let's see what else has come out for us here. All right. So the first card that came out is Manifestation, Prosperity, Fortune, Pure Intentions. And it's number 29. So I think it makes a lot of sense that this card came out, because right now I know for myself, I am finding that as I step in more into the flow, the river of life, and allowing life to sort of surrender to life as it's presented to me, as opposed to trying to manipulate everything that's going on in my life, that I'm seeing my manifestation potential start to come in more, and I'm seeing more accurate reflections of kind of coming back to me based on the thoughts that I'm having in my head and the channels coming into my head. I feel like I'm just going to stop right there and give a really crystal clear example of what that looks like when you start to see these things happening, if they're happening for you or if they're going to be happening soon. So you don't maybe think that you're nuts. Because sometimes when we're going through this process, we do think that we're nuts. So like, for instance, I was at work today and I had this like really strong channel that it felt, to be honest, like it was from my soulmate. But it sort of doesn't, it's not so much, mattering whether it is or was or wasn't. But the message was very clear to be proud of who I am. And I also kind of got this message that was like, you kind of deserve a gold, like, or not a gold medal, just a medal for like something I did recently, which I should probably explain in a bit. But before I do that, I wanted to show you that then my tea bag tonight says on it, oh, is this going to come into focus? Is it clear? It says, be proud of who you are. It says exactly the same words that came through so crystal clear in the channel when I was at work today. And, you know, things like that happen so frequently all the time now that there's just really, the consistency of it is just beyond coincidence. And it really is a reflection of the holographic nature of our reality and understanding how we're sort of stepping into co-creating our lives with our consciousness. So I thought that was it really kind of took me aback just how absolutely precisely that was reflected back on the same day. And what also is interesting is, I think one of the things that I did yesterday that really helped me step into this flow was, and you can see all this, you know, this like gold coins just like flowing, and it's just, there's like unlimited abundance. And what I had done was, I had on the Gemini new moon, I decided to, after, you know, meditating on it and it feeling like the right thing to do at that time, I decided to get rid of my old wedding rings and my engagement ring. And so I made a ritual with some friends, and I went to a river and I said my kind of like my last words and I just threw them into the flow of the current. And and it was after I did that I'm noticing even more alignment with my manifestations, and I'm noticing more clarity, I guess, outside of programmed beliefs and old templated beliefs about the potentials that are kind of becoming available through this process of evolution that is being, I guess, made more available and assisted to us at this time for various reasons, but I'm not going to get too much into why that is right now. I'm just going to say that there is more potentials than there used to be to step into that, and so it's really exciting compared to, you know, 10 years ago, where people might have sat around, you know, for a long time meditating or, you know, trying to manifest with a lot of traction and not really have had anywhere near the power or level of consciousness that is, you know, becoming available now. So I think that in order for this manifestation to really start to become something that's more widespread for a lot of people to see, I do think that there has to be this sort of bit of jolting, which I think is going to happen. It's going to step people more into taking time for reflection and trying to like understand the bigger picture of their lives. And I think that that sort of starts to tap into this reflective truth card. Below it says identity, self-love, acceptance, and it's number 31, which adds up to a 4, which is foundations. Oh, and I forgot to explain that 29 adds up to 11, which is a number of like self-mastery and manifestation. So so kind of developing these sort of foundations in order to step into this flow of being able to manifest and become a co-creator. So yeah, like I don't follow a lot of mainstream media anymore. I do see little bits of it on a day-to-day basis. I don't really indulge kind of too deeply with it. I suppose, everything kind of like looks a little bit different from a step back perspective where you start to kind of step into the perspective that everything that you're seeing is a projection that you're creating. And so it's not really, it's from that sort of observer's perch, nothing, even like seeing, articles that can be really jarring about political leaders and whatnot. They don't have to seem so big and out there and outside of your control because you are creating your universe with your thoughts. And by being kind of a master of your thoughts and focusing on creating a better kind of relationship with yourself, and like it says right here, self-love, and kind of getting a better sense of your own identity through this process of self-reflection, as opposed to kind of getting caught up in that sort of illusion of everything that's wrong outside of you, or supposedly wrong outside of you. We can start to step into this place of acceptance and this flow that I was speaking of, and that flow, surrendering and sort of stepping into the flow where we can start to truly manifest. And that is really where our power is. That's where our power lies. So, and I think that, having everything in the world, especially with political leaders looking so kind of crazy sometimes and out of control, really helps to, help to amplify people's feelings of not being in control. And that is what really kind of cracks people a little, kind of like, and that's exactly often what people need, is to feel a lot of pain and suffering, unfortunately, in order to be broken open so that we can kind of start to go through this process of awakening and heart opening and self-reflection. And that's all kind of necessary so that we can step into the true power that we are really meant to take at this time. And so from that perspective, all the craziness of the political leaders is really just assisting us in our evolution of coming into our own authority and power, which is, so ultimately in the bigger picture, it's positive and good, and can be if with the right sort of attitude and approach. And the last card we've got for this is exploration, and it's number 12. Oh, sorry, no, number 15. So that adds up to 6. And 6 is traditionally a number that's more associated with like, family, devotion, also just like people being like really well-rounded. But it's also, when I think of like the Star of David, there's, 6 points on the star, and that is the 2D expression of the star tetrahedron, which is the base shape of molecular shape of all creation, as people are kind of starting to understand better, as they get deeper into the understanding of DNA below, below the code of amino acids that we're kind of our current like status quo understanding of how DNA is put together. So it's really kind of these star tetrahedrons and within like dodecahedrons, basically, that are kind of clumping together in this sort of vibrational magnetic resonance. And so the point of all that, relating back to the 6, is like there's 6 points on the Star of David as that sort of 2D expression of that. And so, and this, I see this as like this massive burst of possibility, new life. It looks like the explosion of new potential, new galaxy, universe is expanding. We always talk about the third energy as like, the union of the 3 to 1, like this sort of like this trinity, this 3 to 1. But I've been coming into this more profound understanding in the last couple of weeks, that it really, the 6, and the 2, the double trinity, the polarity, the unification of the polarities of the 2 trinities, the masculine polarity trinity and the feminine polarity trinity, which would make the 6, is actually like where true creation happens, and where we can really create and explore. So I guess, as I work through this, I think that's really a lot about what this card is really all about. And if we read this subtext, it says, boldness, unknown, limitless. So I think, it makes a lot of sense that I picked this card up last, because in truth, once we have gotten a bit of more of a grasp of these manifestation energies and are a little bit more used to understanding this sort of how our lives is, a projection of what's going on inside of us, and often right now, because there's so much karma that's coming up to be released in this time period, having to kind of purge a lot of things through this reflective process, to purge out a lot of old templates and beliefs that are kind of keeping this flow from happening. And then, once that flow is moving more freely again, in line with, I guess, nature and our nature, then we can start to really open up to these limitless realms of exploration, which I think at this point, for the majority of us, is not something that we really fully understand. I think most people just don't understand it right now. And a lot of us like to think that we do understand it better than we do. And a lot of us are still struggling a lot with with old templates to do with relationships that are in the way of really stepping into this energy. And it's not to say that some of those connections, soulmates, twin flames, divine partners, whatever it is, it's not to say that those aren't like a vitally important part of this whole process, because for many of us, it is truly, essential to everything that we're going through leading up to this. But I guess what I'm saying is that we don't, in many cases, because the templating is so embedded, a lot of the time it's those connections are still getting filtered through a lot of old paradigms instead of really understanding that really everything is getting cleared out and coming up to go before you can kind of have some sort of more a reconnection, I guess, with that person. Because what you actually have in truth with that person is a very expansive, limitless energy of creation that is not something that we have had access to in a very long time. And somewhere, I think deep down, like we know this, but it's just so, in many cases, deep down, and there's so much programming that has to be healed that it's hard. It can be really hard to see that. And especially, I can say for myself as an empath that's super, super connected to the collective energies, there's still just a lot of fears about abandonment and self-worth and safety that a lot of the feminine energies are still really working through. That is in the way of a lot of this. And, it's really a lot harder for me to speak on what the masculine is going through. And sometimes I don't even know how much it's appropriate to pry too much into that realm, into the realm of the divine masculine. But what I will say is that, like, it's kind of hard to hear this, but because of the fact that the Trinity has been a masculine, and I say, the Trinity of Christ, like, which is one of the dominant world religions that people follow, that's been, so pervasive in a lot of very powerful cultures in the world that have, created a lot of the basis for a lot of the systems and infrastructures that sort of dominate our lives and lifestyles right now, because that's really based in a trinity based on a masculine religious paradigm, a patriarchal kind of paradigm that doesn't acknowledge, I guess, the equality of value of the divine feminine aspect, because that's so deeply embedded, because there's such a long history of women being raped, and also really, really long history of women's kind of spiritual connection and spiritual powers and healing abilities being like really, really suppressed. Like there's just, and like there's, there was a lot of periods of witch hunt. There was periods of well maidens being, like raped, and their wells being abandoned, and the oracles being lost, and like all of this really led to a collapse of the connection to some of these greater realms, multidimensional realms. I think I'm being told it's really important to speak about the multidimensionality of this through that divine feminine connection that's been severed. And so in some senses, the divine masculine connection hasn't been as severed, because there's still a stronger acknowledgement of the divine masculine in the culture. So they do have their own kind of, I would say, more like emotional emotional body challenges that are things that to do with our culture that really don't allow them to process things through the emotional body. That I think is kind of going to be getting worked through more at this time. But some of these higher level kind of healings and reconnections, like really down to like a level of DNA and at a physical body level through and through. So much had to get healed for like the divine feminine over the past, several years in order to get to this point of even like trying to work through things, in the physical with the masculine. So it's not, I don't mean to like be a downer in any way on the feminine or the masculine at this time in saying any of this. It's really just kind of trying to give some historical context about like, well, where are we and how did we get here and why, and try and give some big picture perspective about what's going on. And in truth, any masculine that is involved in any of these connections and has chosen to do so at a soul level, like truly, in all sincerity, wants to heal these issues in our culture so that we can evolve along with the evolution of the planet, just as much as the feminine, and that really these sort of when we say like things like patriarchy and problems of patriarchy, it's really like it's like kind of like saying, well, it's an old program. It was a program that sort of worked for a period of time to achieve certain objectives, and then now it's like, well, as I think people are really going to see more and more this summer, it's really not working anymore. It's become obsolete. And I mean, technically, I've realized recently it's been challenged me, like the program is running has been obsolete basically since the winter solstice in 2012. And really, actually, when people were kind of making all sorts of, conspiracy kind of, or I don't know if it's conspiracy or what, but just sort of weird thinking about how the world was going to end at the end of the Mayan calendar, like at the end of 2012. Really, I realized all that is just the end of a program that was like, that had certain things set up that were meant to happen, and it ended. And that's why so many people so many starseeds and light workers and people that are involved in spirituality were able to, like at that time, literally in many cases, even on the day of December 21st, 2012, were able to just completely change their lives and start into their spiritual lives. Because for people that had already, worked through a lot of their karma, or if they just didn't have any karma, they were just free to kind of step into the new programs, if you will, the new paradigms. And in those new programs and paradigms, like, we have the opportunity to be co-creators. So I think that really this, it'll be really, really interesting to see how things kind of play out this summer, and what kind of goes on more collectively as more and more people start to awaken. Pretty awesome that I spent half an hour on 3 cards, but this is, I said it was going to be a flow, and we're just going to go with it. So that's what we're doing. So what else are we going to talk about? Light worker cards want to come out next. Yeah, I feel like Archangel Gabriel wants to kind of say something about. I have a feeling it's going to be about like karma clearing and light work and stepping into more light work and service. This is the Lightworker Oracle deck by Alana Fairchild. It's a really nice deck as well. So please. So I guess the question more specifically is what do we need to know right now about being of greatest service to the highest good of all throughout this summer solstice period and through the eclipse passages into mid-September and the end of the wormhole. Oh, we got 4. All right. Okay. What have we got here? Okay, I just want to say, like, right off of the bat, as I was pre-shuffling this deck, this wisdom of the divine feminine stood out at me. She kind of popped out and showed her beautiful, gorgeous face. And I just knew that she was wanting to show up. And then there she is again. That's so awesome. And so wisdom of the divine feminine is number 9. And this is actually about 9 is always about completions. And so what I would say about this is, like, it's a very positive sign, in addition to what I was just saying about, like, all of these changes that the feminine has been going through, to, you know, reincorporate these beautiful upgrades and DNA light codes to kind of bring back the sisterhood of the rose, which, you know, the last kind of major carrier of that lineage was Mary Magdalene, and before that it was the mystery schools of sex magic of Isis, and before that in Atlantis it was the sisterhood of the rose, and bringing that beautiful divine feminine, remembering back of the high priestess and grounding it into the world again. And the 9 as a number of, you know, endings and completions means we've really come to the end of a very big process of doing this kind of very, and it has, I know I could say for myself, and I'm sure for a lot of people, it really has not been the easiest process to step back in. I'm just noticing how delicately and beautifully she's holding her hand over her heart, and what she's doing is, right now she's just completely in her feminine. She's completely open. And so she's just sort of doing this gesture of, in a way, it's sort of like a very light protection, but it's also like honoring. Like she's honoring herself as a divine creature, and she's honoring the divine in the other through honoring the divine in herself. So it's very, very positive that affirming that we have made this really good process and progress, and that part of what we really need to do now is, like, I guess, share it, and it's not just for ourselves, but it's for others as well that need to hear, you know, about our journey and what we have to say and what we now know. And so it's really about stepping into the full embodiment and living it, like walking the talk, So, and I know that for myself, the way that I'd like to do this, or that I've committed to doing this, although I have found it hard to find the time, is to write a book about my journey of remembering the divine feminine within. And I did a whole trip to Southwest England and the Glastonbury area in Cornwall. I took some beautiful photos of me at these beautiful sites, sacred sites that have really, really powerful connections to divine feminine energies. And so for myself, I'm going to be using a lot of these photographs in a book as like portals to that energy, and trying to make it accessible for other people, to make it easier to understand and allow it, to just be more available to anyone that wants to connect in with the energy and the vibrations, and experience the beauty and the magic and the joy of remembering the divine feminine within. Okay, orbs of light, 40. So, I know that myself, I've been noticing that a lot of stuff surrounding power surges and a lot more light coming in. I know even for myself, like I've been able to, in some instances, like create like I've been able to pull kind of energy out of the field and create like orbs of light, manipulating them. And it's sort of like a little bit of a weird experience, and because I'm not really used to it, and I'm not really to be fully honest, I'm not really sure yet what the intention really is of the highest good to be doing with those sometimes. But my sense in pulling this card is that if we've got orbs of light as a 40, which is still 4, and that's about foundations, I'm imagining that there's going to be some guidance coming through about how best to be manipulating that light to create spiritual foundations in order to do our light work and whatever service that like we're here to do or that we want to do. In this case, she's got that orb of light, over her heart and high heart, which, you can always take an orb of light and put it in your heart to amplify whatever it is that you want to manifest. I'm not thinking that's really like the prime message of the card. I really think it's just more about like starting to learn about like these increased energies that are in the field and becoming more powerful as we step into our manifestation abilities, and really, just learning about how we can manipulate energy for the good. And in many cases, that will be for healing purposes, and a lot of healing, especially healing of old programs that need to basically be dismantled. And also getting the sense that they provide the opportunity to vision things more clearly as co-creations with Source. Yeah, that's what I'm kind of getting. So to really get to the point where we can do this and have this sort of power, we really do need to clear our energy a lot. Like you can't really step into this if you're still into this sort of creation, architecture, divine architecture energy, if you're still have karma on you. So the violet flame is always good to clear out any old debris. I don't necessarily think sometimes that the karma still really actually exists as a fixed thing. It's just that, because in many cases, the vibrations for a lot of people are so high that it's like, it just needs to be like swept up and cleaned up and thrown in the garbage in a lot of cases. It's not like, it's like dust on the floor, not a stuck in stain, you know, if you want to give a laundry analogy, like. And so violet flame is good. Any sage is good. Palo Santo is really good. I've been finding Palo Santo in my upper chakras to be extremely helpful. So I highly recommend doing that right now at this time. Okay. And we've got unplug from mass consciousness, number 7. And number 7 is a number of spiritual reflection, having, you know, that independent thought, going within to have those spiritual experiences. You know, we've got this, what looks more like a temple type of, more religious type of experience, and that light kind of shining from within. And here, you know, that is coming out of the crown chakra, right? So, and there's like, it's like these steps leading up to it. So into this, you know, sort of higher mind, higher self. I've heard some people say the 13th chakra, you know, above, I guess that would be the soul star chakra above your crown chakra. And in a lot of cases through that, able to connect with star family, which for a lot of people is in Sirius or the Pleiades. What I would say, you know, in addition to that is, like, it's really also helpful in addition to just taking a break from other people and from, like I said, from all of the programming. I know I've been getting like a lot of messages actually lately, now that I think about it, like constant channeling saying, just stop watching everything. And here you are, well, why should I be watching your video if I should not be watching anything? But it's like, I think maybe saying not watching anything is a little extreme, but like really, like, you have to be super curated right now in what programming you are willing to kind of take into yourself. And like, there's just so much potential to release so much at this time over the summer and step into, like, we can just go so high. We can into such high dimensions between now and the end of the wormhole passage that it's really just to your benefit to unplug from the status quo and from the mass consciousness or the old programming as much as possible, so that you can maximize your opportunities to step into the new. And, you know, it's easier said than done. We're just so used to things being a certain way, and we do have, in many cases, obligations and responsibilities and lives that are still tied to old ways of doing and being. So, but especially, if we're living in cities, or if we have children or partners, or jobs that are working with, larger groups of people that are kind of working more from like a typical or more mass consciousness kind of approach, which often is necessary in a lot of more corporate type of jobs. It's kind of saying like, so, well, despite all those things, you really have to do your absolute best to get rid of it. So whatever that means for you, without kind of freaking yourself out over it, because being stressed is just kind of defeats the purpose. because if you're anxious, you're not going to be able to unplug from anything really. So I would say like something I've been doing a lot lately, and I find it helps a lot, is that I turn off my Wi-Fi every night. I try and keep it off as much as I can. I put my phone on airplane mode at night. I try and keep the TV off a lot more. Not that I watch it, but my daughter likes to watch it. But I've noticed that like even even like some of the more quality shows, like it's just not really good to have on. And like most shows are really not that great. I find some of the kid shows like are all right compared to some adult TV, which often has a lot more violence, and cynicism, or just, being a little bit less magical. Like it's like it's the more kind of magical kid shows with like a lot more positive messages that are not, as hard. But generally speaking, trying to step out of the programming as much as possible in any case is just always going to be really good right now. So, and sometimes the easiest way to do that is just to replace it with something else that you find like really distracts you, whether that's like going outside in nature for a walk, going to the beach for a swim, getting out of town for the weekend for a drive, like reading a book, whatever it is. It's just like, just try and break your routines, try and break your habits. And, I would say, even I've known like probably one of the hardest ones, is that a lot of people that are on what I would say is a path of evolution tied to another person, whether that be a twin flame or a soulmate or whatever, that in those cases, there's been a big tendency, particularly for people that carry a feminine or divine feminine energy, to watch a lot of videos, to be getting updates all the time about like what's going on with the energies. And, it's fair, like there's reasons for it. But at the same time, like it does take a lot of time to watch that many videos. And sometimes they do start to get a little bit repetitive. And so I think that like there just has to be less videos as well. And it's not that like they're suddenly going to stop or go away. I'm not saying that at all, and I'm not meaning to demonize them at all. It's just that my sense is like that just the amount of time devoted to watching those and doing that sort of like, I guess, more grunchier inner work that was helping through like understanding what was going on with all the changes as we were kind of basically getting prepared to bring in the divine feminine and the high priestess energies. Like now that we're starting to reach that point of completion and manifestation, I think like the way we're consuming videos and the amount has to kind of reduce and change. And I don't think it's bad. I think it's like, as I've noticed myself kind of doing a little bit, not a major, but just like a little bit of a video detox, so to say, having that little bit of separation from it really, I think, is going to be very beneficial for a lot of people, so that we can step away from like the mass perception of this whole evolutionary process and really kind of understand our own higher selves and our own, soul star family connections, which, there's just such a huge variety and plethora, and the universe is so like rich and full of diversity and awesomeness, and it's like it's kind of time to like go there and step outside of the box a little bit and and not be as tied to the collective process. Now, maybe that's not going to resonate for everybody, because there's a lot of new people kind of awakening into this sort of like, twin flame community, and everyone, like, there's so many people now that think that they have like a twin flame, and it's just like, I mean, who's like, it's all like a little weird to me, because the truth is like, I don't even know if I really believe in the term, like, because really I've realized lately, like, I think that a twin flame is really just any sort of creation that's unfolded through the union of two polar energies, a positive and a negative, or a masculine and a feminine, that have, vibrationally matched and created something new, which is basically the whole universe. And the whole universe is the unfoldment of a flame, of a twin flame. So, and like stars, like there's twin nebula stars, like, that are a really good example, pure example of that. And so really, it's a really helpful term to help guide and navigate through this process. But I think just that the majesticness of realizing that the flame is everywhere and infinite is really, really beautiful and expansive, and really, and we're awakening to that we're awakening to that is the process. And in many cases, some of those people that we've been connected to in that are people that are like soulmates or divine partners, who we might potentially have a co-creative relationship with, because the way that our energies blend amplifies our creative abilities, which is awesome. So, but yeah, I mean, I feel like I've gone a little bit off of talking about mass consciousness, but I haven't really, because what I've done just now is I presented an idea that is not of the mass consciousness of, and not within the kind of mainstream speak about what is a twin flame. And so through that, I've given you an example to ponder about, the creative potentials that are available through kind of stepping back and separating ourselves a little bit, so that we can get in touch with this, our beautiful higher selves and our guides and our light teams that we now have more access to. And the last card for this, and I'll try and do this one fast because I'd like to pull a few more cards before we close out. So we've got the seventh ray of ritual, order, and ceremony, and it's number 44. And so 4 and 4 adds up to 8, which is a number of abundance, money, prosperity, or karma in a lot of cases. And we've got this woman. She's doing, I see. She's doing like a dance. She's doing a dance, and there's like a firelight and smoke all around her, and they're showing her through the different phases of her progression, and she's opening herself up really, really wide, and she's got this, her breast becomes exposed, and her eyes are closed, and she's really kind of in this dance, in this flow, in this movement. And the red obviously is very kind of symbolic of root chakra. Okay, I'm seeing this more now, and how this has to do with money and stability, And so, and actually thinking back to a personal reading I did, I understand more now what this is all about. Okay. So yeah, there's going to be this time coming up after, I would say after like a lot of this other stuff has happened. And we start having these deeper connections and like understanding our manifestation abilities better and the divine architecture and working with light and connecting with our higher self and our guides and all this awesome stuff. I will also add I just want to say one more thing, that we do have a Neptune retrograde coming up, which is going to assist people that have psychic abilities that want to open up to their psychic abilities or to their guides to do this at this time. And so that's part of why it's really important to take advantage of that this summer, to make the most of it. So so it's like, and that combined with this wormhole, it's just like, it's just a huge opportunity for growth. It's not to be missed. And I will add to that there will be chaos in the world on some level to force people to kind of step into this on a bigger level and not it be a small, there'll be more people stepping into it. So just because the opportunities are so ripe. So, and what I would say about that is like, as this relates to this card is I think some of that chaos is really going to threaten a lot of people's feelings of safety and security. And because there'll be, I guess, maybe threats about lack or scarcity or change. And so we've got all this illusions and clouds, basically of, I guess, old kind of paradigms and sort of issues surrounding the root chakra. And so, for people that have been on this path for a while, any sort of spiritual path for a while, and it's done a lot of healing of the root chakra, it's kind of like a time to really step up and shine in a way to show how you sort of freed yourself of a lot of these fears that might be coming up for other people. And I see that as being tied to this beautiful sharing of your beautiful divine feminine and energy. Like you're free to be this, or you are this, and you're helping other women go from being crouched up and kind of scared by everything that's going on, and to begin to heal their own root chakras and start their journey towards embracing their higher selves in the light. So yeah, I'm getting the sense of starting to help other women as well, and giving them some of the guidance and the tools they need to release some of their karma. And really, in many cases, I don't like to overuse the word karma, because it's really a lot of times just illusions and old programming that just needs to go. And I think when you put it as such, it does make it easier, because it doesn't make anybody feel bad about themselves or like they did something wrong. Or, a lot of the time, when really bad stuff happens, you hear like, oh, well, you're going through all this shitty stuff because you have a lot of karma. And it's like you start to think, oh, I must have been like this really horrible person in another life or something. And it's just like, you can get really down on yourself, and it can really lower your vibration. And it's like not, I would say that's like not productive, not helpful, really. Like really, actually, to say, it's an old program that's sort of obsolete and there's a new program available to you. Do you want to like learn about how it works? And like, because you can just sort of step right into it if you just sort of do, like release the past and start to learn how to forgive. And which is, for me, one of the hardest things is learning how to forgive.
Often I have to get like angry first before I forgive. But you know, like if that's your truth, that's your truth. And like if sort of like having to have that this fiery, jarring movement to free yourself is what's required so that you can really like be at peace and open your heart and step into yourself, and so be it, is what I say. Because you know, like you got to do what's right for you at this time as we step into this this new phase of evolution, which is really not about letting other people be your authority or making you feel bad about yourself or making you concerned that there's nobody. The world is, you know, a scary place that's not going to take care of you. It's all going to go. So I'm just going to take this a little bit back to this thing about seventh ray of ritual, order, and ceremony. So, you know, I've had it come up in other cards, like these really free, liberated sort of African dances, other kinds of dances. I know myself, I've done a shamanic dance, and it was very cool and very liberating. I think that it'll be interesting to kind of see like how this one kind of plays itself out. But I think that as we kind of step in more to these high priest, my sense is like as we step more into these high priestessy energies, that like there'll be more kind of channel guidance about so maybe some of these rituals and ceremonies from the Sisterhood of the Rose or the Mystery Schools of Isis that might be extremely beneficial and helpful to what's going on right now. So that's really, really exciting and cool. And through that, probably doing like a lot to just generally speaking heal the collective issues around the root chakra, which is it's just huge. I just can't really explain how huge that is. That like we can do a lot of healing individually, and that's so important. But there is sort of a collective reflection as well, and a lot of it will never collectively really be able to shift out of where things are right now until the collective root chakra can be healed. Okay. So, what are we playing? Mermaids. So this is the Oracle of the Mermaids by Lucy Cavendish. I think it's my newest deck of Oracle cards. I love it, love it, love it. It's a really unique messages in the book. It's really special deck. From that very unique and extraordinary mermaid perspective. And I've been connecting a lot actually lately since I bought to the mermaid energy since I bought this. And that really excites me because when I bought a deck about fairies, I really thought I would be able to connect more immediately with fairy energies when I started working with that deck. And it didn't really happen as profoundly as I had hoped. But with the mermaids, I was able to connect in much faster, much more deeply, and so I'm really excited about that. Oh, there's one that just wants to pop out. We'll see what that one has to say. So I think that they just want to kind of give some additional messages to just reinforce, what we've already been talking about. And we'll see if anything new comes up. But let's see what we've got here. Transparency, honest, authentic, genuine, present. The mirror, know thyself, self-examination, seeing who you really are.
I've had both of these cards come up lately. Coral's wisdom, colony, delicacy, fragility, works that are created over great periods of time. And the return of Aphrodite, temple birth of the goddess guidance, goddess energy, treating as sacred, which I also got this card very, very recently. So these cards are also kind of romancy cards. I mean, they're not like overtly because like a deck like the Romance Angels or anything like that, but they do speak to the energies of love and romance, and I feel that coming through a lot through Ophelia, and so, you know, I can say off the bat from you know, 3 out of the 4 of these cards that a lot of this is centered around relationships, whether that's like with somebody who's like more like a divine partner or a soul partner, or not. It probably, my sense that I'm getting right here is more so is to do with that connection, but it with others as well, like that. It's really like the themes, the main issues throughout this whole period are going to be learning how to be transparent and authentic and present with that person to a level that probably, and also them being a mirror for you and you being a mirror for them in terms of learning about ourselves and who we really are. And these are things that are like going to be happening on a level that like we can't fully appreciate or understand right now, like because of all the old programs. So, and I kind of realized this pretty recently, that like even today, like even since throwing out my rings, it's like you kind of like, you know, to be fully frank, like you kind of think like for at some points like that, like the concept of like, oh, am I gonna marry this person? Like, is marriage important to this? Like, it just sort of comes up, and then you're like, and then it just hits you like that it's kind of irrelevant. Like it's all old programs. Like it's just irrelevant. And we're opening ourselves to a level of self, knowing and transparency that we've probably never done with any other person before in our entire lives. And that's really scary and vulnerable because we haven't even really been able to do this with ourselves. But through the relationship, we have the opportunity to grow and to have this sort of self-awareness and awakening. And the numbers associated with these cards, so this one is a 2, so yeah, that speaks very much strongly to partnership. And the other one is 21, which is 2 and 1 adds to 3, and that's to do with, I guess, creating something new out of that relationship, out of that transparent relationship, and out of that mirror. So it's kind of like first you have to be transparent, and then you sort of can have this mirroring effect to start creating something new and learning how to work with your reflection. And so sort of like working with the reflection and the water, element is a different way of interpreting, and there is light on this water. It's a different way of interpreting and understanding that previous Lightworker card about learning how to work with light. So it's light, not just light on its own, but working with light in water. And while we will be working, I think in a lot of cases with a partner on some of these things, like working with mirrors and working with like reflections in pools, provides their own unique experiences for our self-understanding and awakening as well. And certainly by, there is a lot of meaning to the fact that in the more initial stages of like learning to be just transparent and honest, we've got this woman who is sort of in the shadows and submerged below water and kind of like speaking through the water, and you can see these air bubbles coming out because she's speaking through her emotions, her more raw emotions. She's actually coming, like she's letting her shadow emotions that like out that she had. In many cases, she feels she's never been able to have. And in a lot of cases, there might be things coming up that a lot of people don't even realize that they have deep down. And I would say, I also think a lot of inner child stuff coming up that people might think is like silly or childish or dumb. And then we're so above it because, we're so spiritual now. And like, we're just going to like ascend to the galactics, because we're going through an evolutionary process. And it's like, no, that's not happening. Like, we've got like little 5-year-olds inside of us that still want to like live out their unfulfilled fantasies. It's like, and I don't want to like say that other stuff isn't good, like, because like it's all good, but I think that we need to have sort of like some humility and a balanced approach, and realizing that a lot of us are still have a lot that we've got to heal before we get to some of that other stuff. Sorry, I shouldn't be laughing so much. All right. So we've got, okay, I love this card, Return of Aphrodite. Yeah, like, it's gonna be so worth it, guys and girls. Like number 13, adding up to 4, new foundations of learning how to work with the light, connections. Look how connected she's just, in many respects, she's like the temperance card from the Rider-Waite Tarot that just got like 10 million upgrades. She's just like, she's connected with the land, the air, the water. She's connected with the fifth. She's completely in the fifth dimension, in dimensional vibe. Like she's connected with the birds. She's connected with the dolphins, and she's got this key, and the dawn is rising on this new, literally like way of being in this higher consciousness, which a lot of people refer to as the fifth dimension. And but when we look at it this way, the return of Aphrodite, it's like return to the remembering the goddess, that it's not just the god, it's the god and the goddess, that there's both, and that both are required for creation to exist. And through the remembrance of that, we can raise ourselves to this a much greater level of harmony with our surroundings, and this beautiful ability to co-create and live more peacefully with the earth, in our divinity and our goddess energy. So, I mean, it's very positive. It's very, very, very positive. And so while I have a feeling that there might be a rough ride this summer on many levels, at different scales in terms of things kind of that might be seemingly coming out of us that we're not expecting, that things might be happening in the world that we were not expecting, and there might be some, what feels like some shocks and some disruptions. But, you know, when things are coming out of the shadows, and out of, you know, what was hidden, and dare I even say things that have been hidden in the ocean, put out of sight, anything that's been hidden out of sight, in ourselves or in the world, it's going to come up and make it easier to understand how the kind of holographic co-creation, new program, new earth kind of works, so that we and start learning how to use it, and start learning enough about ourselves that we can finally kind of come to this greater enlightenment about the divine feminine within all of us, and the return of the goddess and the high priestess. So it's really awesome. And this last card, and then I think I'm going to end the reading after that. Actually, no, I'm going to pull one more from the Magdalene Oracle. So this card is a 31, so it also adds up to a 4. So again, it's about, also like this card, they're both very foundational, right? And if you add them together, 4 and 4 is 8. So it's leading towards this new prosperity, this new abundance, and this new way of being. And so, you know, corals, wisdom, colony, delicacy, fragility, works that are created over great periods of time. And yeah, what I'm sensing with that is like it's just the start of something much bigger. It's just gonna be something like, it's like this is part of a much bigger process, and we're laying the foundations for it now. But it's like a big delicate tapestry, and it grows organically, just like a coral reef is just this beautiful organic underwater life form that takes so long to grow and is so easily destroyed. And so I suppose like there's a little bit of realization, I guess, after like maybe many victories, disruptions and then some victories, that ultimately in the bigger picture, for all the kind of awakening and opening that we're making, that to truly actually fully integrate these new this new balance, and this, you know, these balanced divine feminine and divine masculine energies and creations into the world, and having, you know, being able to be co-creators on a broader scale is actually like a very big, long process. It's going to take quite some time. And, you know, it's not to say that that's like a bad thing, because, you know, we can only really handle so much change at once. And in many respects, for a lot of us, this is the work of a lifetime. You know, this is kind of what we came here to do in our, you know, throughout the course of a lifetime, was to go through this process of transformation and lay down this sort of like groundwork, this pioneering work to kind of return to these previous ways of being that were, you know, existed, you know, many years ago, in different cultures, civilizations, different even things, you know, that from different experiences on different planets potentially, you know. Like, and I know that this is true because, and I as a from my professional career, from what I do, I really do fully understand how difficult some of the problems that we have are actually going to be to change because of the way that we've built our cities, our towns, and our lifestyle, and our food chains, and our supply chains, and the way that basically all globalization works, the way shipping networks work, the way we travel by airplane. I mean, it's just things are not going to just suddenly change from a dominantly sort of masculine approach to constructing the world to something that is living, in balance, where there's a balance between the masculine and the feminine in the approach to how we live on the earth. Like, it's just not gonna be the quickest change. So, and the truth is that while we are co-creators and we are becoming into our co-creation, like changing, we're not just gonna wake up and have manifested a new neighborhood. And I don't think anyone is really thinking right now that they can do that. And if they do, they should give me a call and I'd love to talk to them about it. But and I think that you kind of like get my point that like that's kind of like a very big manifestation and it takes time. And so like really I think that so there's going to have to be, I think, some sort of coming into a bit of like balance and maybe a little bit more of a paced approach and strategic approach to how we can, bring these energies more and more into the world beyond just, a relation, the way it might exist in a relationship between two people or amongst a group of friends or a group of, soul family, and even like, your physical family, your extended family, your blood family, like all of that is like really great right now. But then how to like really, how to really share that like in terms of like the education system and the way we work at our jobs and the way that we build our cities and all of that stuff, it starts to get a lot trickier because the lifestyle that we live is a direct reflection of the thinking that created it. And so when the thinking that created all of it is imbalanced, it's really easy to get stuck in that. And so just to like give you a quick little example, of like, for instance, a lot back in the 70s and possibly in the 60s as well, like a lot of tower communities were built by some famous, modernist architects, like a very famous man named Le Corbusier. And a lot of them were built in New York. A lot of them are still standing in parts of Manhattan and Brooklyn and probably elsewhere. I know some in some areas of the Bronx and whatnot have been, I think, probably dismantled because they were in like there was just so many problems there with ghettos and gangs because the way that they were built and the way that the highways cut through these neighborhoods was really just so lacking in any sort of softness, organicness, femininity, connectivity. It was just so unbalanced and rational in its approach that the things just fell into decay and people lost their ability to have a sense of self-control over creating their lives. And so it fell into like these sort of these gang states. And like, even still today, like a lot of these tower communities that were, built based on some very kind of imbalanced
rational principles that weren't really thinking about the whole of the community and how that really functioned from, you know, how that actually, that space encourages people to connect and have, you know, build and foster neighborhood and community and support having families come together and children interact for new opportunities for growth and exploration, and adults to have opportunities to, you know, explore their creativity and like all of this stuff. Like it just was like not even, it was like a non-thought. It was all seen, I guess, as like emotional, not real things, not valid things. And we know now that we have so much better understanding now. We know that these things are valid, but and more and more, that I think the more like there's more science to back up like the importance of things like play-based learning and the importance of being outside, you know, to develop for, you know, children to foster their connections with nature and expand their creativity. Like the more data we have, it's always helpful because the system is fundamentally still built on needing to have that sort of data and proof and like rational analysis for things to start to shift. And so like, I guess what I'm saying is like, it's a delicate thing. There's a lot of balance, but the good news is that really by going through this whole process of bringing in this beautiful energy and individually, you know, bringing ourselves into this new dawn and this new place, it's gonna it's a really big first celebration in terms of like the bigger picture and how this starts to like filter into new understandings and new ways of new creativity and trying to kind of like, I'm not even going to say trying to figure out, but like just like, I guess, opening to how that will weave into a more organic creation of how we're living our entire lives and how that gets interwoven into the whole fabric of our earth. And I do think, you know, one more thing I'll say is that our relationship with the ocean and our spiritual connection with the ocean and with sacred sites probably will help to provide some like assistance and guidance with that and provide additional support. And the love we give to the earth through these portals, I think helps to give support, but then they can give back more knowledge and wisdom to us from the elemental realms in order to facilitate this longer term, bigger project of a lifetime. So it's getting long. We're just going to spend a few more minutes. It's interesting, like this is the Magdalene Oracle, and yet I felt so strongly from the get-go that Radha wants to give us a message today through the Magdalene Oracle. She's been coming to me a lot, Radha, and I have a feeling I know why. I do have a beautiful connection to her energy, and so she just wants to give us like a lovely kind of closeout message to sum up this whole beautiful reading about what's coming up for us over the next few months as we step into this life-changing wormhole and beautiful eclipse, series of eclipse passages. All right. Here we go. All right. Ah, beautiful, beautiful. Yeah.
This card has been coming up a lot, Eternal Embrace. Yeah, this card is very, very much about polarity integration, and through that polarity integration, about the creation of the flame. And so you see you've got the feminine polarity and the masculine polarity. And as they unify their energies, they create the flame. And so, you know, I would say that like that this ties very much into the previous things that have been coming up about mirroring, and the other cards, and realizing that, you know, like ultimately, you know, sometimes there is a big spark and a really big charge, and some people that we have such a powerful connection with can really trigger us and drive us just like, oh my God, like just, it's like, how did that person say that? Like, I don't even, oh my gosh, like I don't even want to know what my connection might think of some of the things that I say and how that might trigger him, but I'm sure I would get a good laugh. But but my point being is that like some of the things in the past that I've heard, you know, this other person say, I'm just like, what? Like, really? And it's just like, but the thing is that like you have to realize, you know, like this is like, it's your polarity, and that in embracing that and forgiving yourself and that other person and just surrendering into this beautiful opportunity for creation of something new is it's a gift, and it is truly, that spark that's created through the connection is the sensation of eternal love. And it's the eternal love that's created through the flame, and through the flame spark that's potential through the union of those two polar energies. And it is the most it is truly sacred. It's very, I would say, like deep compared to like the kind of love, connections, and feelings that we're more used to like having and more comfortable with sharing and expressing, like in our current like mainstream culture. And I think that like there's still, I think, for all of us, or for a lot, no, I shouldn't say all, but for many of us, like there's like being able to really surrender to that and feel comfortable with that difference, that eternal like feeling of a love energy versus like a non-eternal feeling of a love energy, or you could say it as a unconditional versus conditional, but I don't like those words as much. Like it's a bit of a different vibe. It's new. It's, for a lot of people, it's a little different. And for people that don't really know anything about it, they might be like thinking that it's kind of weird and not understanding it and not getting it. And so like, I think that like there's still, especially for like a lot of masculines, there's still like a lot of fear around that and kind of wanting to like hide from it because it just like there's a lot of judgment around it. But it's actually, you know, like it's creation, and actually, you know, its creation is a true creation, and true creation is true power, really. And so it's really our perception about it that is just kind of skewed,
because we've been used to trying to create things in an imbalanced way, which is actually not powerful and has created a whole lot of problems on the planet. So it's going to be like a bit of, I think, a growth and a learning curve for all of us to kind of get more used to this change. But I think that people that are kind of pioneering this make it a lot easier for other people to kind of open up as well, and it not then seeming, you know, so strange or weird, but almost becoming a bit of an example, and for others to help them with their own growth processes. So, and last, we've got gratitude. And of course, we've got this beautiful, what actually looks very much like a Kuan Yin, in this beautiful golden orb of light. And that brings me back to that card about orbs, kind of being brought back up again. And speaking of gratitude in relation to those light orbs, and not just the light orbs, but the ability to work with divine light and divine architecture, and also to be able to embody the high priestess and our goddess energy. And really, really all it's saying in this is that the perspective that we have to have, like, in order to be able to be successful with it, is one of gratitude. Really, that's just it. Like, because when you think about it, like, if we, like, the first thing in many cases is that we do have to clear ourselves out of, like, a lot of negative thinking and old thought patterns, old beliefs, and we have to surrender to the flow. And then sometimes, like, I think that, like, what I would say is, once you've done that, like, if you're ever starting to get stuck and something is kind of leading you back towards a negative thought, I don't necessarily think that just trying to affirm the opposite of, like, because you want a certain result to happen, is necessarily, like, the right way to be going. Like, there's, like, and I don't mean to in any way, like, diss affirmations or anything like that, because they are positive. But as we're stepping into, like, this really surrendered flow, and I think that's what's really kind of going to start opening up for a lot more people, you sort of have to get to this point where it's like, okay, like, everything is just sort of, like, fine and good as it is, and try and find, like, how, like, a perspective where you can find some gratitude for it on some level. Like, okay, like, like, just some sort of higher observer's perch kind of perspective where you can see how that's, like, ultimately helping you in your process, in your evolutionary process, and in your, reincorporation of the divine feminine, and helping bring those energies down to the planet, for yourself and for everyone. Because we do want, obviously we want to love ourselves first, and then share that with others. We can't really help others if we can't help ourselves first. And yeah, so I would say that is my interpretation of that, finding the higher perspective so that we can have gratitude. Very, very important. It's going to be very, very important. And often, I will just add one more thing. Like, I really, really do find quite consistently that right before we often have a big breakthrough, and in terms of increasing our power and getting into our flow, like, there is often something that happens that can be perceived as really bad or negative or be a really hard thing. And so sometimes, like, if we if we can't go through that process of seeing from the higher perspective, so we can have some sort of gratitude for that process on some level, like that higher kind of understanding, then we can get really stuck and it can like shut down our process. And really, like, I guess like that's what like us that are, you know, kind of committed to this process and to doing, you know, light work and helping, I guess, bring in new paradigms. Anybody that's sort of doing that and wants to be committed to that has to, I think, really be able to step into this now, as opposed to just, you know, saying like, well, this is how the law of attraction works, and if I just think these thoughts enough and then let them go, that everything's just gonna like work out and my manifestation's just gonna come. Because that might not actually be the case, and you might actually be being asked to fully surrender into the flow 100%. And that's okay, because when you're 100% surrendered, you're 100% more likely to end up on your highest timeline and where you're supposed to be, and like in, I would imagine, much more at peace and satisfied on from a truer, deeper place in yourself than maybe where your mind thought you wanted to be or where you needed to be. So it can just be so hard to go through this process because of ego. It's just like, and I, you know, like I don't really have like a very dominant, you know, astrological chart like that's just like got like a whole lot of masculine like drive for things to, you know, to be pushing out in the world in a certain way, like to make things happen. I really don't. And so like for anyone that like has that, that's watching this, just like a lot of this stuff I can imagine would just like be grating so hardly on them. Like it's just so against a strongly masculine nature to like open up to a lot of these concepts and ideas. And but it doesn't mean that you can't. I mean, and there's this like there's actually, you know, a new book that came out called Luminous Life or Luminous Living by this oh gosh, I should have put the name when I post this. But the person who wrote it is like a man who's an ophthalmologist, eye doctor, and through his, you know, his years doing his practice and his observations and the research he was doing, he came to this conclusion. And I was just reading about this, that from his, you know, who I would imagine is a predominantly masculine perspective, came to this same conclusion about stepping into the flow of this surrendered flow of life to find our peace and our joy. And then I think the whole book tries to explain this from his experiences and from a scientific perspective. So it's a new book. It just came out this year, but I think that it's probably worth a lot of people maybe taking a quick peek at. I was able to take out a digital copy from the library, and I think that the fact that we're seeing reflections like that already, you know, before at the beginning of the wormhole passage, is like really, really, really positive about this whole possibility of stepping into this luminous life and this divine feminine flow. And it's not just for women; it's for everybody. It's really is. So we can all be living happier lives that are more in harmony with other creatures and the planet. And so there's nothing negative about it for anybody. So that's my reading. Kind of long, but it's totally worth it. And I tend to not do them that often. So, you know, I just wanted to kind of not put any constraints on it and let it be what it wanted to be. So thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure, and I hope that you have a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful summer solstice, and that magic and miracles are right around the corner for all of you. Love.
Bye.